There's the interest for sure.
I think so.
Oh yes.
Because in Belarus we are going to publish, hopefully in the next few months, some sort of new, revised and longer version of my book.
Right.
So, but I'm not sure if there is any interest to make any sort of translation into English.
I think it will be good because I think it was a lady called Christine Kylo who has done a straightforward index, really, but with brief descriptions. This was about 5 years ago, I think, of all the Orthodox churches in Western Europe and their different backgrounds and languages and size and histories and stuff like this. It was quite a small little book, but something more substantive I think would be very useful.
Yeah, but my
because the historical perspective
my book is a bit different because it touches mainly upon the current issues of the Orthodoxy and it touches upon the development of the Orthodox and the current state of affairs in different parishes across Europe. So, Father Gregory, maybe the first question. Of course, I mean, I knew that you converted from the Anglican Church many years ago, and you were Anglican.
20 actually.
20 years ago.
Yes, it's my 20th anniversary of ordination to the priesthood tomorrow.
Right. Congratulations. Congratulations. Yeah, and you were an Anglican priest beforehand, right? Do you understand correctly that the main reason for your conversion was actually dissatisfaction with the liberal practices of the Church of England?
Yes, broadly speaking. You would have to divide that further into different issues, categories, concerns, but I won't second guess what you're going to ask me. Yeah.
Right. But I mean, if you decided to leave Anglican Church, why didn't you join Roman Catholic churches? As far as I know, most priests.
Basically, I could not accept. Well, there are a number of issues. I couldn't accept the claims of the papacy to universal jurisdiction.
Right.
And I was growing more and more intolerant of Western Latin theology, particularly in relation to salvation, the cross, and I felt that it was a faith disconnected from the fathers and disconnected from my own English tradition, actually.
I see. Right, so you saw a sort of break of the tradition of the Roman Catholic churches in England with the English tradition.
Yes.
What do you mean under English tradition?
Yes, I mean, it's interesting, you see, that before the Norman invasion, there were thousands and thousands and thousands of saints, which technically are in the Orthodox calendar, but which of course many have yet to be properly researched. But I know that the Russian Church has taken 10 of those major ones into the calendar currently. But after 1066, because I think this is the more important event for us than 1054, there were only 13 between 1066 and the Reformation.
I see.
13. Now, I'm sure England didn't like godly men and women in that period, but the process of glorifying a saint had become so expensive and so complicated by political matters and so centralized in Rome, particularly after the Carolingian reforms, so-called, that so people were denied their own righteous ones, their own friends of God, were occluded by Roman bureaucratic processes. And I think this was a terrible deficit for the English Church in the medieval period.
Again, I would like to return to the liberal practices of the Church of England. I have briefly mentioned.
Not just liberal praxis, but theoria as well. It's the liberal theology. It's the whole basis on which the thing is conceived.
Yes, but as far as I remember, in 1995, possibly the only issue which was of concern was ordination of women into priests. But no such issues as, for example, female bishops or ordination of homosexuals, etc., what it happens now in the Church of England. So was it the main reason why you decided to leave? Was the main sort of liberal trend?
Let's just deal with the ordination of women first, okay? Right. My own view then and now is that decisions about the ministry of women can only be made by the whole church in council.
Okay.
Right? Therefore, if two schismatic provinces of a schismatic Latin church, post-schism, claims, now with a global presence, the Anglican community, claims to be able to change a fundamental aspect of ordained ministry itself without waiting upon a general council, and completely unconcerned as to its ecumenical implications. This to me was unacceptable. And I was actually there on General Synod before the vote was taken, when the ecumenical patriarch made a visit, and he came to the synod, and there was a translator who spoke in Greek, and Metropolitan John Zazoulis was there, and George Carey was the Archbishop of Canterbury, and I was sitting near to them, and I was a representative of Chester Diocese on General Synod at that time. And the ecumenical patriarch, all the brotherly business, all the brotherly this and brotherly that. But after that, he said that the prospective ordination of women to the priesthood would cause significant ecumenical problems between the Orthodox Church and the Anglican Communion. Did the Church of England care about this, knowing it to be true? No. Those parts of the General Synod, and more widely in the Church of England, who thought this was an issue of justice for women, were single-mindedly focusing on the goal. Nothing else mattered. Because the assumption, and it was very often said in my hearing, knowing that I was sympathetic to orthodoxy, the Orthodox Church will do this, as will Rome eventually. We're forging a way here. We're setting an example that others will follow.
I see. So was it said actually more than 20 years ago at the General Synod of the Anglican Church? It was said at the bar when people were talking. It was never said openly. I see. But did they actually give any reply to the ecumenical patriarch who said about possible difficulties in the
I don't know. No comment was made when he actually in the speeches when he actually visited synod. I don't know if there was any private correspondence. I haven't a clue. But I thought when in 1992 the legislation went through and the first ordinations happened, there was, as you probably know, a system in the Church of England of so-called flying bishops who would minister as bishops to congregations who registered their objection to the ordination of women to the priesthood. It's not known very well by the Orthodox, but the Church of England does have canon law. It's not very good canon law, but it has canon law. Canon A4 says that anyone who is ordained by a bishop, a canonical bishop in the Church of England, must be accepted as ordained by everyone else.
What does it mean, everyone else?
Well, that's not the phrase that was used, but if someone is ordained a priest, be it a man or a woman, by the Church of England, it is not acceptable for another priest or another person might not be ordained to say, that is not a priest. I am not going to receive the ministry of that person. Because this is just Catholic ecclesiology. You don't ordain people that are only going to be accepted in part of the church. It's a nonsense. Axios means the people are saying yes. The bishop has decided, the people are saying yes. If someone says anaxios, I'm flipping back to orthodoxy now. If somebody says anaxios, if it still goes ahead, unless there is an appeal to a higher authority, appeal to the patriarch or whatever, the Holy Synod, it's going to happen. And therefore you have to accept that person is a priest once it's been done. Yeah? So the Church of England was saying, no. I mean, I was present at a meeting of dissenting clergy in Crewe in Cheshire, and I asked the Archdeacon of Macclesfield, who was going to be one of these flying bishops eventually, well, how can I reconcile what General Synod has done with Canon A4, when I represent, with others, a constituency of people who cannot accept the ministry of a female priest. You can't reconcile it to the canons. His answer, and I quote, was, in the Church of England we have ways of getting round things always. And the way of getting round things was to have these flying bishops going around. And I said, this is an insult to the women concerned. This is breaking Catholic ecclesiology. This is not in conformity with Anglican canon law. This is a church within a church. This is internal schism.
Yes.
Goodbye. And that is actually what... Now, I mean, actually, if the Church of England was convinced that the ordination of women was the will of God, or the will for the church, or whatever, then what it ought to have done is ordain female bishops first, not priests.
Yes.
Because the priest derives his orders as we know historically how the presbyterate developed in relation to all sorts of the diaconate. It was derivative of the bishop. The primary ministry of that is that of the bishop, and he delegates to the presbyters what he delegates to the presbyters. Therefore, there has to, I think, in Catholic Orthodox ecclesiology, there has to be some coherence between the priest and the bishop.
Yes.
But of course, in the liberal Protestant way of doing things, you start with female deacons. You get people used to female deacons. Then you get female, and people say, "Oh, isn't she lovely? Oh, I love Reverend Sarah or something." And then people say, well, "Why shouldn't she be a bishop?" But it's the wrong way around.
Yes, I mean, in principle, if they decided to really to be logical in their thinking, you're quite right. They could ordain female bishops, and female bishops could ordain female priests, for instance, to be quite logical in that. Now,
of course, the big difference, of course, between Orthodox and this Protestant conception of priesthood is that we really don't talk about validity. We talk about whether someone, excuse me, this is really whether really somebody belongs to the church or not, or whether somebody is a priest or not based on simply the late Latin Tridentine thing about form and intention, but as to whether they're organically part of the church or not.
Yes.
And so, whereas the West would be always kind of saying, "Oh well, you think that these women bishops are, the orders conferred by women bishops are tainted because they were women." No, it isn't a question of taint. It's a question of actually. It's about ecclesiology. It's actually about the church being internally coherent with respect to holy tradition and the scriptures and everything else.
Right.
And that matrix of scripture and tradition was the fundamental issue, not the ordination of women. This was just an important but derivative of the breaking of a primary principle, which is authority within the church. How do we know that this is right in the church or wrong in the church? And that is what the liberal Protestant mind cannot answer. And so, if you were to ask me what really propelled me out of the Church of England, although the ordination of women was the trigger, the basic problem is authority within the church, scripture and tradition, but also the whole conception of Western Christianity in relation to salvation, which for me, to be honest with you, was a far more important issue.
Yes.
Because and over the years it's become increasingly clear to me that Orthodoxy has a radically different conception of salvation to that which applies in either the Catholic or the Protestant West. I'll go back to Komiakov's thing about there being two sides of the one coin, and it's absolutely true. It really is. The only difference between Catholicism and Protestantism is whether you sacramentalize it or not, but the actual thing itself is exactly the same.
Right.